Good morning, yes. Mike.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Tigers Roar. I'm Tommy Krysan of Pelican Sports TV. Glad to have you tuned in on this Wednesday night for another live edition of Tigers Roar. Coming right at you, joined by NFL scout, Fox Sports football analyst Chris Landry. Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's been a wild week in Tiger Town. There's no question about that.
No question about that. We got a jam-packed show for you tonight. We will take some phone calls a little later in the segment. We'll hear from Brian Lazar, TigerBait.com. We got defensive line stuff for you, special teams. Got some interviews, clips, and quotes. Got our weekly run through the athletic department. We'll have a potluck, as we always do here on Tigers Roar. Appreciate you being tuned in and ask you to spread the roar about this program live each and every Wednesday night, 8 to 10 o'clock, prime time, Baton Rouge, Lafayette, and New Orleans. Streaming online, you're seeing the gold belt on your screen, PelicanSportsTV.com. Let your friends and family outside of South Louisiana know they can watch it as well. If you're catching this Thursday, Friday, Saturday on many of the other outlets who pick up our program, we appreciate you tuning in and enjoying the show that airs live each and every Wednesday night. Chris, before we get into some housekeeping announcements, I'm sure everybody waiting wants to know the very, very latest on the situation that evolved from late last Thursday, early Friday morning, an incident at a local establishment near the campus involving X number of football players, most notably the 4 that have been identified and met with the police, and more notably than that, senior quarterback Jordan Jefferson. And there was some developments this afternoon, Wednesday afternoon, in Baton Rouge.
Well, yeah, the latest developments is police has supplied a search warrant and have taken some items, personal items of Jordan Jefferson from his apartment as they go through their due diligence and go through this investigation. No arrests were made. It's interesting that in the press conference that the Baton Rouge Police Department had, we talk about the likelihood that there will be arrests made, but none at this point have been made. But that investigative process is taking place and obviously escalating to the point of getting some physical evidence from Jordan Jefferson's personal belongings. And of course, they have, I also understand, have gotten a number of witnesses that they have contacted that have been pointed out by both sides as they go through this very exhaustive process to try to get to the bottom of what happened, who did what.
Well, a couple of things that come to mind, and obviously neither Chris nor I are attorneys at law, and we're not going to pretend to be attorneys, but we can think logically and been around the block once or twice in the world. But, you know, it brings up a lot of questions, and we can go in a lot of different directions here, and we will give you guys and gals a chance to phone in here in just a little bit. But, Chris, what I perceive, again, speaking for myself, is that the Baton Rouge Police Department has got conflicting stories. They've got this from here, they've got this here, and it's not all matching up. So they're trying to do what they can to discern what is accurate, what might be bent out of shape a little bit, what might be off the wall. You know, kids are kids, you know, everybody's memory can fade a little bit. Guys are going to take care of their friends and say, oh, I didn't see that. You know, so I'm really thinking that one of the reasons for the length of this is they've got the left hand and the right hand, and it's two different stories. So it's up to them, being the experts in law enforcement and investigation that they are, to try to do their best to figure out what in fact happened.
Well, I think there's polar opposites in terms of the stories that they have, and I think that has probably been a challenging part of it, is that they, you know, the whole story is you got one side of the story, then the other. The truth is somewhere in the middle. Well, it almost appears from second and third hand information that you get is that the truth is nowhere to be found here. It seems like it is completely polar opposites in terms of stances. So I'm sure that has created a lot of challenges, and they'll continue to investigate it. I think now the issue becomes from an administrative and as an administrator of the football program, which Les Miles is as the head coach, having to look and do his own investigation, which any coach does, to see exactly what rules have been broken on the team, how does he want to handle it, go through different discussions internally. And I know he's met with staff and done that. You know, exactly what he knows, how much he knows, how quick he or how close he is to a decision, don't know that. As this lingers on, I know that my sense is, from being around that team a little bit yesterday and the coaching staff, is that is a tremendous distraction. and in that no one really knows. I think that a lot of the players, particularly the Unity Council members, kind of feel like the whole team is being indicted, and while we understand over 50 members broke curfew, certainly very few of them, it appears, were involved in anything close to a criminal act, if any of them were. So I think they're feeling and looking kind of to their head coach for leadership in a decision that we don't know what's going to come in. I think another dynamic is, and we talked about it on radio today, is exactly how far do you take a decision when maybe you don't have all the information. If you've got your players saying, Coach, I haven't done anything, I wasn't there, I wasn't involved, whatever the case may be, who do you believe? He is certainly as a head coach, you're not a criminal investigator. You want to believe what your players say, but then there are other evidences you have to look at. So you want to look at situations clearly. I know in the Duke situation, which Joe Oliva was an athletic director, had a situation with the lacrosse club that I think everybody remembers what happened there. It was a rush to judgment. They were basically found guilty in the court of public opinion, and it was discovered that nothing happened. So what does that leave us? Is there enough there to suspend a player temporarily, or just in terms of breaking rules, not necessarily casting aspersions on any criminal activity that could have happened or may have happened? But it is an interesting dynamic, and quite frankly, I don't think there's a right answer. In fact, I think almost every answer in any direction you go, if you're Les Miles, is one that's going to be critiqued and heavily criticized. To heck with critique. I think it's probably going to be heavily criticized, and I don't know how long this is going to last. I know it's frustrating for everyone. By the way, there's a game a week from Saturday.
Well, and probably a good thing for the football team. Ironically, the situation you mentioned with the Duke lacrosse team when Joe Oliva was the athletic director at Duke. He's now the athletic director at LSU. So I'm sure he has met with staff to say, hey, let's learn a lesson from what happened up in Duke University, where we went too quickly with some things, which may be even a reason more for Coach Miles to be waiting until the time is exactly correct for him to make any announcement, whatever it may be. Now, and so again, you got to be careful here. However, when you don't just get a search warrant. Obviously, the police had probable cause. I believe it was Judge Chip Moore in Baton Rouge signed the authorization for the search. Jordan Jefferson was present at the apartment when the police arrived. They carried some paper bags of evidence out. We don't know what that evidence was. You could speculate clothing, perhaps shoes, perhaps, who knows what. That's speculation. Don't know what else it might have been. Maybe a cell phone. I don't know. Speculating. So they've got reason to keep going to do that. So they're trying to get to the bottom of it the best they can, if not 100%, 99%, and trying to discern from all the stories they've got of what truly happened. Is anybody at fault? Do any charges need to be pressed? Or is this just going to be something that cannot come to a reasonable conclusion, and you just got to kind of write it off and go forward? But I think you hit the good point. You did the nail on the head. You said it on radio, and you've said it tonight. No matter what Les Miles says next, there's going to be criticism. Good, bad, and different. Maybe heavier than not. I don't know. But this is a no-win situation. And unfortunately, we talk about it all the time. People's health and social is far more important than the fun and games department of sports. But unfortunately, as you said, LSU's got to play Oregon in one of the top collegiate matchups of all time to open a season, on September 3rd in Arlington. And this has become a major distraction. You can't help but say that it is a distraction to this entire football team and coaching staff.
Well, I worry about a lot of things. I worry about the fact that apparently some individuals were hurt. Thankfully, not severely, although 3 broken vertebrae is severe, I guess. It's severe enough. So I worry about that. I worry about their well-being. I worry about if something did happen, getting to the bottom of it and having the proper penalties enforced in that. But also worry about exactly if it didn't happen the way some of the reports are, as the old saying goes, where do I go to get my good name back? I think we live in a world where the court of public opinion is also overrides the true courts of our legal system. So I don't know where to go with it. Obviously, I don't know, like anyone else that outside of the people that were there. I don't know what happened. I have a sense based upon information from coaches and administrators who've talked to players that apparently were witness to this. It's a difficult situation because the timing of it makes it very complex. I don't think there's any question that while some feel like they have a good idea what happened, can you prove it? I think we all know that's a big part of it. And if it's not proven, does that mean it didn't happen? Not necessarily. I just think there's so many issues here at play that have clouded this whole situation. It's made it very, very, I worry about the young men that are involved and maybe some decisions that they may have made, players, and how it affects their future and possible records. So all those things have kind of gone through my mind in a very frustrating time. I know it's been exhausting even for me just being around it, and I know the tension and the stress level on the coaches and players at LSU is significant. And I can tell you right now, as much as they won't say it this way, that big ball game is a secondary issue right now. It is trying their best to focus on what needs to be done, but it is not the thing that's primary on the mind of the coaching staff and players, and that's a whole other issue, and understandable, I guess, but certainly something that I think it could be problematic in 10 days.
And one other thing that I'm going to draw a presumption on, and that's dangerous and it's speculation, but something tells me that somebody's story has changed since last Saturday morning to get the search warrant, and that somebody maybe started remembering a little bit better, or maybe somebody, and again, I'm not saying any one person, but somebody active in this story, a key person involved, has all of a sudden said, well, maybe I didn't tell you the whole thing, or maybe I should have worded it this way, which is causing a delay and causing other things to surface. I don't know that, but again, I mean, all indications are that the fight lasted 3 minutes.
You're hitting on something that someone in the legal profession told me, and this is something we need to look out for. Nathan Fisher has taken over as legal representation for the 4 LSU players. I'm told the normal procedure is when we're taken in for questioning that they're questioned individually. And obviously, as trained investigators and trained in putting these questions in a way that sometimes it comes across as, well, so-and-so said, Tommy, that you
had a
so-and-so.
red shirt on.
Well, wait a minute. And I think it'll be interesting to see. There could be a natural conflict of interest where each of these players may end up having to get their own legal representation because perhaps representing all 4 could be problematic as this investigation goes through its path where potentially an arrest could be made. And, this is a team effort, or so to speak, the way it's being approached right now. But as it becomes a situation where, okay, you're being finger pointed, and well, wait a minute, it wasn't me. He did it, and all of a sudden, then you could have an interesting dynamic. So I don't know where they're quite at that process, but that was pointed out to me a couple of days ago. So I think there is something to that for people that are involved in this legal and criminal justice process.
And it was pointed out to me, elaborating on the thing I made with the story changing, and you just walked me right into it. Like if I'm the investigator, I say, well, Chris Landry, they tell me you had a white shirt on that night, and you say, well, no, I didn't have a white shirt on. And then somebody else tells me you did have a white shirt on. Now I got somebody says you did, you say you didn't, somebody else says you did. Where do I go from there? I think that's what's happened. I think we've had some stories change during the course of time here, and it's complicated. Nobody's behind the closed doors. We'll just have to wait and see. That's all we can do.
We do know this. Les Miles and the Players Unity Council on Saturday, this past Saturday, apologized. And Coach Miles at that point said that their further punitive action would be taken. So that was an indication to me that that there was probably something along the horizon, that he learned of something at that point. Now, there's no question both sides have been lawyered up big time. And so what's being said, how it's being said, how it's being phrased is certainly being handled with kid gloves. So, folks, everyone wants to know what's going to happen. I certainly don't know. We can speculate, and everyone. I think one of the things that's a little bit disturbing, and it's I guess maybe understandable, but doing radio, New Orleans and in Baton Rouge with you in the afternoon, it's become a very divisive topic in the community, and it's fallen on so many different lines, racial lines, pro LSU, anti LSU, pro athlete, anti athlete, and a lot of different things. That's not good for anybody, because everybody's saying, well, I heard. Well, nobody knows. Everybody heard from somebody, or they read it here or there, and I don't think any of that's good. That's the world we live in. I guess there's nothing to change it, but there's just a lot of missing pieces to this puzzle and to this story.
And I'm going to concur what you said. I've seen some things on Facebook. I've made some phone calls with people, if he did wrong, kick him off the team. He didn't do wrong, you can't prove. I mean, there's a lot of different thoughts, all based on speculation, rumor, and innuendo, and that's unfair. And it kind of goes back to what you said. Where do I get my name back? If Jordan Jefferson is not arrested and it's deemed that, he's not did anything criminally wrong. Yeah, he broke curfew. We know that, but that's not a crime in the law books. And that's something Coach Miles and the staff can handle internally and have already handled and probably will continue to handle. So I think you just got to sit back, put it to the professionals at the Baton Rouge Police Department to do their job, and then when they file a report, you got to assume that they've done their best to come up with the best way they can describe what has happened, and then whatever steps fall in after that, whether it's arrest, no arrest, charges, no charges, trials, that's the country we live in, so we got to wait and see, no question about it. Now, we're here about 15, 17 minutes into our 2-hour live program on a Wednesday night. I doubt very seriously if anything will transpire between now and 10 p.m. when we go off the air here on Wednesday night. Again, if you got us Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you got a replay going. But we do have Pelican Sports Radio. 3 o'clock tomorrow on the Score 1210 a.m. in Baton Rouge, streaming online at thescore1210.com. Certainly we'll have any and all of the latest that would happen anytime during the course of the day tomorrow. The Score 1210 has local sports programming all day long, so you should be able to stay informed. And, of course, we'll have the latest at 3 o'clock. We are there Monday through Fridays. Got to get ready for an LSU-Oregon game and high school football jamborees and New Orleans Saints and Tulane and ULL. Plenty to get ready for, but obviously this story is carrying the flag right now pretty much across the board. Also on the Score 1210 on Thursday, as you can hear it each and every Thursday, it's the Chris Landry Show. Give everybody a hint of what you'll have, provided nothing major breaks on the Jordan Jefferson story.
Yeah, we're going to try to keep it football related, on the field related. I thought it would be a good time with the college season upon us here to go down. I'm a voter in a Harris poll. How I break down and evaluate college teams. I've got a 20-plus area criteria that I go through. So I thought I'd kind of go into what I look for and how to evaluate teams. Also, it's close to a few days, in fact, for the first cutdowns in the NFL, and a week later, final roster cuts. So I'm going to go into kind of roster makeup and kind of how that process works a little bit, including who's eligible for the practice squad. We're in football breakdown segment. We're going to go through the major conferences. We went through all the state schools last week. We're going to go through the major conferences, how I see them shaping up, at least coming out of fall camp as we wind that. Of course, in honor of the fact that curfew was missed at LSU, as we know, I thought it would be interesting to take a trip down memory lane and tell folks how Vince Lombardi handled curfew one time. I think you'll find it really interesting. It involves Paul Hornung and Max McGee, those crazy little wacky guys that always found a way to get under Coach Lombardi's skin. So we'll kind of have that with you, among other things.
I got a real quick curfew story for you because it's really good. I may have shared this on radio one day, but Coach Woody Woodenhofer was working for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 70s when they were winning Super Bowls, and Mr. Art Rooney, the owner of the team at the time, his sons own it now, curfew when they were in Latrobe, Pennsylvania at training camp. And one day Woody and a couple of the coaches, ended up out all night at the Knights of Columbus Hall with a couple of cold ones or whatever, and Coach Woody and the coaching staff were returning to the dorms in Latrobe at like 8:45 in the morning. And Mr. Rooney was coming out heading to Mass. He never missed Mass on a Sunday. And Mr. Rooney said, "How you guys doing this morning?" And Coach Woody said, "Early Mass was a good one," as they went into the dorm. Didn't want Mr. Rooney to know that they were just coming in from the night, so they put it off as having attended early Mass that morning.
It's quick thinking.
Yeah, Coach Woody. But anyway, and also the Chris Landry Show, for those of you in the New Orleans market, we got plenty of you tuned in down there. The Chris Landry Radio Show, which airs on Thursday, is repeated in New Orleans at 6 p.m. on WTIX 690 AM, WIST Radio in New Orleans. You can get a replay of that. Also Saturday, KKAY in Donaldsonville, 11 a.m. You can get a replay of the Chris Landry Show, a rebroadcast. And you and Brian Ali Walsh, an award-winning writer who has covered the Saints for as long as I can remember, Monday through Friday morning, 6 to 8 a.m. with the Morning Drive. WIST Radio, 690 AM, 104.9 FM. You and Brian mixing it up a little bit in the morning, a little breakfast stuff.
Absolutely. We've been covering and following this LSU stuff, keeping everything up to date, all things Saints as they are practicing in Oxnard, California, getting ready for week 3 of the preseason and everything football. It's that time of year, so give us a listen.
When we come back, we're going to get into some LSU defense. We got comments from Coach Miles and Coach Chavis taken from Media Day a little bit over a week ago. Chris will have analysis and evaluation on defensive tackles and ends and a whole lot more, some individual players, some special team stuff. We've got a bunch for you. We ask you to spread the roar about this program on Pelican Sports TV. Chris Landry, NFL scout, Fox Sports football analyst. I'm Tommy Krysan of Pelican Sports TV. You are watching Tigers Roar.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Heinen, Miss Louisiana Team USA 2011.
And I'm Paige Pennick, Miss Louisiana USA 2011.
And
you're watching Pelican Sports TV.
40 years, 4 decades, nearly half a century. That's how long the citizens of Greater Baton Rouge have chosen Richards Honda. A simple, sincere, and honest process.
Louisiana's oldest and most experienced Honda dealership for over 40 years, Richards Honda.
Our primary fundamental belief is that better ingredients, better pizza is quality, and that's what Papa John's is all about. Nobody does what Papa John's does.
Right now, get any large pizza with your choice of toppings, even our signature specialties, only $11. That's right. Order now at papajohns.com and get any large pizza with any toppings, just $11, only at papajohns.com.
Better ingredients, better pizza, Papa John's.
Attention, all companies dealing with cash flow problems. Companies are going out of business every day. Bankruptcies are at an all-time high. Accounts receivable delinquencies are at the highest levels in decades. Let us help your business collect money owed to your business. NRH and Associates has the solutions. Let NRH and Associates utilize their innovative collection methods to get cash flow back into your business. Call 601-889-0501. That number again, 601-889-0501.
You're on the same flight.
We'll be on the same plane regardless.
Yeah, we're gonna need to work. Anything together? Do we know that?
Got it.
Thanks, Dave.
The big, brilliant, thin Samsung Infuse 4G. Only from the network of possibilities, AT&T.
Pelican Sports TV presents Pelican Radio. Get ready to mix it up with me, Tommy Krysan, and Chris Landry, weekday afternoons from 3 to 4 p.m. Pro sports, college sports, high school sports, and much more. On the Score 1210 a.m. and on the internet at thescore1210.com.
40 years, 4 decades, nearly half a century. That's how long the citizens of Greater Baton Rouge have chosen Richards Honda. A simple, sincere, and honest process.
Louisiana's oldest and most experienced Honda dealership for over 40 years, Richards Honda.
We continue with Tigers Roar on Pelican Sports TV. Chris, let's take a little look at the defense, some thoughts, some analysis. Each week we've been kind of doing offense and defense and different position breakdowns. We'll do some special teams tonight. But up first, we'll get some comments from Coach Les Miles and Coach John Chavis, the defensive coordinator at LSU, about the defensive line in particular. There's some talent there. There's some guys that are really expecting to come on and really have some good seasons. So first up, we'll get some comments from the coaches, and then we'll let Chris give his analysis and evaluation. Here is Coach Miles and Coach Chavis about the defensive line.
It's been my philosophy and our philosophy that if you're going to be strong on defense, you got to be strong up front. There's no question about that. And when you start looking at where we are at defensive end, and I think we've gotten better every year. From the first year, we were better last year, and certainly I think we'll be even better at defensive end this year. And there'll be 5 or 6 guys that will do the majority of playing for us. Ken Adams, who came on and really did a fantastic job for us. You know, Ken's a big physical guy that can run. You'd be shocked at his speed. I'm not going to advertise his speed, but you'd be shocked how well he does run. Mingo, another guy with great speed. I don't think that you'll find 2 faster defensive ends in the country. They may be playing on the same side or they may be playing across from each other. Getting Sam Montgomery back is a big plus, and I'll tell you, he's healthy, he's full speed, he's not missing a beat. Certainly it put us in a situation where we had to make some adjustments last year when we lost Sam. He's raring to go, and certainly, like I said, he brings some special things to our defense in terms of a guy that can play the run well, that can rush the passer. LeVar Edwards, Chancey Aguirre, those 5 guys give us 5 guys that are SEC ready to go play and have been tested and have played at a high level in the SEC. And when you're bringing 5 guys back like that, and certainly talented, you've got to think that's going to be one of your stronger positions on defense. Inside, as I said, we lost 2 starters last year. What we try to do is play 5 or 6 tackles in every single ball game, and that won't be any different from this year. There'll be some different names in there. I think Michael Brockers has had an outstanding offseason. He's played a lot of football for us and certainly ready to take that role. Josh Downs is another guy that has done a tremendous job for us. He gives us some quickness and some speed at the position that really creates problems for opposing blockers. You know, 2 young guys, one redshirt freshman, one a true freshman that will be seeing a lot of playing time, J.R. Ferguson. And you know, when you start talking about young guys that really hadn't taken snaps in the SEC, they've been in practice, they've been through some of the battles, and obviously Anthony Johnson was here through spring practice, so we got a good look at it. You know, you're talking about 2 quality players that are 310 pounds plus, somewhere in that neighborhood, but both of them have outstanding speed, outstanding strength. Both of them are very, very aggressive. Both of them do a great job of being run stoppers for us, but it also gives us some great pass rush inside. And certainly Benny Logan has really gotten himself in a position to where he's going to be an impact player for us right there. And again, we're talking about 5 guys that we feel very confident right now, along with some others, but 5 guys that we feel very confident that can line up and play at a high level in the SEC.
Chavis, Chris, no stranger to defense, throwing out some pretty high praise out there on a few guys. You've seen tape. You've been to the scrimmage. Tell everybody about the defensive line.
Well, it's been one of the more impressive units in fall camp. They have played very well, and I think the thing that does impress me is how well the defensive ends have looked. You know, Kendrick Adams, Coach talked about him. I think his use of hands, his ability to shed, has improved a great deal. I think for LeVar Edwards as well, who Coach mentioned in that group, his use of hands has improved a great deal. So you got one of your starting defensive end, and your 4th guy in the rotation, LeVar Edwards at defensive end, is a positive. Sam Montgomery was the best pass rusher on this team last year, not Drake Nevis, until he got hurt. And I think Sam Montgomery has got a chance to be a big-time player. I think he's got plays with great quickness and great leverage, maintains his pad level very well. And Kiki Mingo is a nickel rusher that's going to play in a lot of their base sets. You see him at 237. He's a little bit heavier now, but he has got really a jet coming off the edge. So you've got a deep group there at defensive end. You got 4 guys that you're comfortable playing. Chancey Aguirre has played a good bit. He's got size. He's got playing strength, particularly on early downs at the point of attack. Could be a very effective player. So when you're talking about going 5 deep, and those are with Kendrick Adams and Sam Montgomery and Kiki Mingo and LeVar Edwards and Chancey Aguirre, you've got 5 defensive ends that you've got some versatility, you've got some depth. It's going to be a big part in the rotation, and when we go to the defensive tackles, we're going to talk about how you rotate those guys a great deal. But so important, because if you've got a number 1 defensive tackle, number 2 defensive end or defensive tackle, and they sometimes play at a very high level up to about 40 snaps a game, and then you look at their production level and it decreases, because over and over again, when you start getting into a rotation, you can stay fresher. The importance of having that quality depth, I think, is not a small issue here. I think it's really big.
Let's talk a minute about Kiki Mingo. When he got on campus, he had the frame, he had the body. He has really filled out, as you said, heavier than what we had on the graphic. I don't even know that he was a true 6'5" when he first got in. I thought he was closer to 6'3" from what I recall. This guy and had speed, and he's contributed on special teams last year. But according to Coach Chavis and the things you've seen, this guy has really, made that progression in that first or second year that coaches really love to see.
Well, certainly it's not just about weight, but it's about strength and being able to play off box. I think when you're a great speed rusher and you become what we call a one-trick pony, good pass protections can slide and take the speed rush away. But when you've got the ability to play off blocks, come inside with a counter move, it just makes your speed rush that much more effective. He's done that very well, and I think you're going to see a nice combination as they can play him in a lot of their base sets, and he's their primary nickel rusher. He has gotten a little bit stronger, and he's gotten a little more lead in his pencil, and that's allowed them to be more of a factor as a pass rusher, because he can play off blocks a little bit better.
And let's talk a little bit now about the defensive tackles. I know you have some analysis there.
Well, Michael Brockers is certainly, to me, the elite guy of this bunch. He's long-limbed. He's a really lean athlete with a lot of potential. I think he plays with heavy hands and a long wingspan that keeps blockers off of his chest and can maintain separation. Keeping him healthy, I think he could take that next step and be a really good player. Coach talked about Josh Downs, and he's the high motor, quick guy that is with quick hands and plays with good leverage. He's just got to stay healthy. That's been a problem for him, and it's something that I think could determine how good he can be and how effective he can be, because he's a really good technician. If you're looking at the third defensive tackle spot, he talked about Ego Ferguson. J.R. Ferguson is his given name. But this guy's got some size, bulk, nice get off with a good pad level, and I think he certainly has a chance to be a real effective as that third rotation guy at defensive tackle. Anthony Johnson, true freshman. He's got a lot of ability. I mean, he could be the next great defensive tackle with the great first step quickness. I mean, he's certainly got some of the things that I saw in the Glenn Dorsey's and the Anthony McFarland's going back. Don't want to put that on him yet. He's got to earn that, but he has, at this stage, a lot of those similar qualities. So you got 4 quality guys right there, and Benny Logan is a guy that they like, and right now it fit in as the 5th defensive tackle in that rotation. He's got good size, good frame. His get off, he's got a nice get off, plays with heavy hands. So it's a good combination of guys that can get upfield, play the run pretty well, play off blocks well, all do a pretty good job in the leverage game. So when you've got 10 guys, 5 guys at defensive end and 5 guys at defensive tackle that you feel pretty good about working in the rotation, I think it's important. You want to have your best players on the field in the fourth quarter with the game on the line, but if those guys are not involved in a heavy rotation, their play, even though they're the frontline players, their production level, as I just said, goes down considerably if they're having to play the majority of the snaps. Keeping them fresh is important. Keeping that pressure to break down protection schemes is something that you always want to do. And it's going to be interesting in this first game. I think a lot of pressure is going to be on the linebackers, but the play up front to be able to neutralize things and allow linebackers some free flow ability against the speed they're going to see against Oregon is going to be pivotal.
Well, and you mentioned Anthony Johnson, the freshman out of New Orleans, true freshman, we'll point out. Let's get some comments from Coach Miles and Coach Chavis about Anthony Johnson, and then we'll get more comments from Chris Landry on it. Anthony Johnson from New Orleans.
Yeah, I think he has some of the things that Tyrann Mathieu has. I think he has a vision of where he wants to be and what he wants to do and how he's going to attain some of the goals that he has. And I think that he brings that work ethic to bear in individual periods, and it's turning over. I think he's a guy that has rare athletic ability, strength and size and speed. But again, the difference is those minds that say, no, this is a play I can make, and I'll learn how to make that play, and I will mature quickly. And I think that's Anthony Johnson.
Oh, he's very, very talented. Certainly, when we were here last year, no one would have predicted what Tyrann Mathieu would have done for us this past season. At his position, I think he's close to being as talented as Tyrann was at his position. A lot of times that depends on opportunities, which he's going to get, and we'll have to see. But it's a lot more difficult in there. It's a lot more difficult than it is at DB, but certainly talent-wise, he has the talent to be a really, really fine football player. We're going to make sure that he's having success because it's important. We want to put our athletes in position where they can have success. When they have success, then they become more confident. When they become more confident, then they become better football players. So it's going to be important that he's handled correctly, which we're going to do that. We're going to give him opportunities to be successful, and because he is talented and also hard-working, that's important. And let me tell you this, a lot of times, we don't mention character in here, but it'd be hard to find a better or a young man that had better character. So when you start looking at character, you start looking at talent and his willingness to work, I think that he will make an impact. I don't know exactly how big, but he will make an impact.
Chris, you're in the evaluation business, and when any school signs 20, 23, 25 guys, rule of thumb, history tells us there's going to always be a couple of them that will contribute as true freshmen. Anthony Johnson is one of these guys. I mean, you've seen the tape on him. You've talked to the coaches. This is a guy, as Coach Miles and Coach Chavis said, who's a little bit ahead of the curve. He's one of those. He's going to be out there, and Tiger fans are going to be seeing him play.
And it's very rare for a defensive tackle. I mean, that is a combat zone there. I mean, you don't do what Tyrann Mathieu did in the secondary at defensive tackle as a young guy. You just don't. And this guy's got the ability to play a lot in the rotation, and I think take that next step. The one thing too that I think Coach brought out there, when you're, first of all, you have to have the natural ability to be able to play at a high level, and he's got that. You have to have the attitude and the work ethic. You got to love what you're doing. You got to believe in your abilities and want to perfect your craft. If you work hard at it and focus on what I'm doing right and build off of that, and focus on what I'm not doing right and improve those areas, that's what makes a good player great. That's what takes a player to a different level. Now, that doesn't matter if you're a try-hard guy and you don't have the ability. It's when you have that combination. I think this young man has it. All he needs is time. All he needs is reps. And I think he's earning some of that. And I think he'll factor in there, as I think right now he's kind of in that fourth slot in the defensive tackle rotation. So we'll see if he can get a lot of reps there. Injuries sometimes can force him to have to grow up a little bit quicker. But this guy's going to be a good player. I hope people have a realistic expectation in terms of numbers and what type of an impact he can have. But he'll have an impact in the rotation, I guarantee you that.
Well, and when you talk about defensive tackle and the adjustment into college, in high school, pure talent, physical talent, ability can probably get him by in most cases. But all of a sudden you kick it up to the collegiate level, and albeit the SEC, he's going to go against some experienced linemen who know a few tricks of the trade, and sometimes they don't even have to block him. They can just make him go the wrong way and not even lay a finger on him. So he's got to learn a different football game, and he's not going to get by on physical talent alone, as he may have got away with at the high school level.
Absolutely right. You can win with physical ability at the high school level. You take it up that next level, you got to understand blocking schemes. You've got to know how to break those down. And getting in the film room and learning in that area, that's where you really can kind of take your game to the next level. And that's part of getting better and having that desire. You got to love that. You got to love the game and live the game, as I like to say it. And I think when you have that, and I think this kid's got that, that's where the instincts come from, quite frankly. I mean, you know, people think it's instinctive that you just fall out of bed with it. Well, I think to some degree what it really is your ability to live the game and understand the surroundings, and then you instinctively kind of have a feel for what they're doing. You get a feel for what your opponent's doing. You get a feel for how to play the game and the nuances of it. And when you combine that with really natural God-gifted ability, you got something special.
Chris, has the evolution of the college football game from a run game to a passing game, if you will, has a good trap block become an antique thing? I know some teams still do it a little bit, but man, you as a youngster learning about the game of football, never played it but coached it and was around some very talented high school coaches for many, many years. You know, a good trap block, boy, it's fun to watch how they would just set up a lineman and he'll come through the hole thinking he's got it made, and then the guard will knock his heels above his ears and the running back's through there for a 7-yard gain or more. Has the trap block become an antique thing?
It's less, because you got a lot of zone blocking schemes, which zone blocking is area blocking, where you take the defensive front and block them where they want to go, and your back's responsible for cutting on the opposite side of it. So that reduces it a great deal. And angle blocking, you still see some trap blocks, but you got a lot of man blocks, a lot of lead stuff, a lot more pulling. But the trap block is it's not like the old Steelers of the 70s that were really perfected it. You still see it in some good running teams. LSU would do a little bit of it, and they can be very effective.
And for those of you on the football terminology, sometimes you see a fold block, which is a little different than a trap. Similar to a trap, but it's when maybe the guard and tackle take opposite guys and nobody crosses the ball for the trap block. But, you know, I can remember seeing some of those things. And also the factor in that is, in college, you're thinking the defensive linemen are a little smarter and might not fall for the base false read or the base block and step into a hole and get trapped. I mean, yeah, that's part of the learning process at Anthony Johnson. You know, as defensive linemen get smarter, they're not going to be susceptible to that.
Well, and the evolution of the spread offense is a more of an up-tempo, and it doesn't lend itself to a lot of the trap blocks. Now, the teams that run a lot of pro-style stuff, LSU, Alabama, a lot of teams, Wisconsin still does a lot of it. But they, you know, a team like Wisconsin is a lot of come off the ball, and a lot of drive block, and a lot of bob block and big on big. But you still see some of it. But there's no question that when you look at the advent of the spread offense, up-tempo style, again, more zone blocking, you see less and less of that.
Let's kick it over to special teams. There's not a coach in America that won't tell you it's offense, defense, and special teams. All three phases of the game very important, and special teams can absolutely have an effect on field position. It can have an effect on the scoreboard. It can win or lose a football game, either with mistakes on special teams or, you know, capitalizing on opportunity. And LSU pays a lot of attention to special teams. They got a new coach, Coach McGahee's in, who's got some NFL ideas and plans that he's going to incorporate into the LSU special teams. But you'll be the first coach to admit, I mean, special teams, you can't disregard them, you can't take them lightly, because they can make the difference in winning and losing. Well,
you know, always focus on this. If you look at a play in special teams, pretty common to change field position by 20 or 30 yards. Well, what is that? You think about it. That's 3 first downs, 30 yards. And you have field position that's changed a great deal. You know, I had a feel for it, but Coach Orangeburger taught me one thing. You know, and it's the first time I really thought of it this way. The punt is a very good play. You know, you think about plays in the game of football where you can invoke 30 yards of field position change. You think about that. You know, a big sack, an interception, big pass play on offense. Those are big plays that everybody jumps up and cheers. But one of the things that we chart that's one of the most important stats in any level of football is hidden yardage. Penalty yards, special teams yardage. You start adding up those yards, they get into a large number. And so that is going to greatly affect your field position that you alluded to. It's going to have an effect on your offense and defense. And it is the third of the game, and it's the third of the game of the reason, because if you look at the total number of snaps, offense, defense, and special teams, those snaps are less. But the value in terms of how it affects yards is definitely a third of the game. And it is something that's going to be really crucial. Everyone's talking about the quarterback position and the defense and the running game. Not enough attention is paid to the special teams unit. Without good special teams, this team, there's no way they come close to the record they went last year. Probably 2, maybe 3 more losses, because with the struggles on offense, special teams really kept them in the Auburn game, a game that they lost, I know, but what does it do for you against North Carolina? What did special teams, you think special teams helped you there when you scored as many points as you did? So I don't think this team can afford much of a drop-off, if any, on special teams this year. Coverage units, return units, so it's important to keep that in mind. Are there going to be money inside the 40-yard line as a field goal kicker? That's important too. All of those things are going to be huge factors in this team's success or lack thereof this year.
Chris, I'm going to assume that it's safe to say that, football teams that go 9-3 or 10-2 or better, if you look at those hidden yardage stats cumulatively at the end of the year, there's going to be a decided advantage in that stat that you and coaches who know what they're doing evaluate and break down. And then if you look at that team that went 2-10 or 3-9, it's the opposite. That's probably not rule of thumb, but probably very close.
It is, and look at the style of the team. Let's just take LSU and Oregon, 2 contrasting type philosophical approaches. For an LSU team that is going to be a little basic on offense, they're not going to be overly aggressive. They're going to win with defense and a running game. Special teams, yardage on special teams, invoking that field position advantage, really important. Now for a team like Oregon, less so. They are an up-tempo. They score with minimal snaps. It's important, but not as important. You take teams like in the NFL, like the Rams, who had really good teams. They turned the ball over a great deal, and their special teams was not very good, mainly because their roster was made up of a bunch of little guys to fit their offense, so they weren't as good covering kicks, but they were overcome it. So if you're an explosive offense that you can score a ton of points, you can maybe overcome some deficiencies on special teams. But look at the good defensive teams, the good running teams. They're always married with good special teams units. So I think that's something you look at, and that's why the teams like in the SEC, the LSU's, the Alabamas, been really good. Look at the teams that have had success in the national championship run. I think they all are reflective of good special teams, good running game, and a good defense.
Well, it's no secret Vanderbilt has All-American punters because they punt a lot. I remember reading a stat in the late 80s. There was a 3-game window when Vanderbilt punted more than Oklahoma had punted the whole year, because Oklahoma was just going up and down the field, and the guy punted 15 times all year. Vanderbilt punts that often in a couple weekends, so stats can be misleading in that category. Let's get some comments about kickers. That's always a special topic among coaches, from Coach Miles about his kickers going into the 2011 season from Media Day about a week ago.
Special teams, we said goodbye to Jasper, but Drew Allman is, in my opinion, having a nice start to a fall. His field goals, it'd be a little premature to say that he's going to be as good as Jasper, but I think he's going to have a very, very good year, and I think that he will and did compete with Josh and understands what it takes, both at the kickoff and the field goal extra point. Brad Wing, James Hairston, it'll be the punters of note, and along with DJ Howard, who's, in my opinion, a guy that's really busted his behind this summer to go in there and compete. So I like us. I think we'll be 40 yards, good hang time, and a very, very fast coverage unit underneath that.
I think it was said on Media Day on kickers, you know, with Drew Allemar going to handle the field goal and extra point chores, that, you know, the key thing that Coach Miles wants to see is how he reacts after a miss. I mean, you know, you don't want him to miss a field goal, but I'd say it'll happen. How does he respond? You know, as the old saying, it's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it. And if he, you know, if he misses a 32-yarder in the Oregon game, the next kick and how he responds to that will be important. Most coaches, I've been around some college coaches, don't even want to know the kicker's name. They just want to make the field goal, okay? And it's a thing, but it's important, and they all realize it's important. And LSU's got some big shoes to fill of Josh Jasper.
Well, I think kickers, place kickers, have a lot of similarities to golfers in that it's really important that when you miss a kick that you quickly identify what caused that problem. Was your approach angle a little too flat, a little too steep? You know, that you got to notice that you can't go in to a shell, just like when you miss a 4-foot putt. You got to know why you did it and not let it get in your head, so the next time you're in that same position, you're going to struggle. But I think Drew has got a lot of the qualities, the versatile qualities that Josh Jasper had. Just that confidence level is something you have to develop, and we have to see how he develops in there. Now, you know, the punter situation is going to be interesting. DJ's a good punter. His handling time is a little better, and he's more consistent. Now, Brad Wing is in Hairston's a young kid with a good leg that I think is more of a developmental guy. Brad Wing is an interesting guy. He's a big guy with a powerful leg. The big thing, probably the most understood part about punters, is handling time. The ball hits their hand to the time it's kicked. How quick can they get rid of it? You know, hands are really important for a punter because if they have to adjust and double catch the ball, it's more susceptible to getting blocked. Another thing to look for is block zone. If that block zone from where the ball is snapped to where the extension of the punter's foot is, if it's under 9.5 yards, you're in real danger of being blocked. That's why we call it the block zone. So those are two things to watch. And Brad Wing has got a rugby-style capabilities. I don't know how many people know this. He's left-footed, but he actually punted right-footed in the spring game. He's got that type of rugby-type ability.
So he can kick it with either foot?
He can.
Bad snap, if he has to go left, he'll kick it.
He can, but the big thing is not how explosive a leg he has, because he's got that. How consistent is he with his get-off time and his hang time? You know, it's not one of those things where you can have, it's not a trade-off where you kick a 60-yard punt and then it's a 30-yard punt. You can't have that. You're much better off at getting 38, 40-yard punts with a nice hang time. That's what you want out of your punter. So I think developing that consistency is going to determine how quickly Brad Wing can earn that job. If not, I think DJ is certainly a guy that's capable of giving you that consistency. I think, and Coach alluded to it, the athletes that LSU has, particularly with young guys, what we call good, really good athletes, it always gives them a huge advantage in their coverage units. I think they progress to the ball very nicely. They do a good job of avoiding blocks. And I think that's really important and why they consistently are pretty good. The return units should be outstanding as well. Patrick Peterson is gone, dynamic playmaker, but Tyrann Mathieu is I think, a outstanding kick return potential that has the type of suddenness and movement skills that could make him an elite returner as well. I think Mo Claiborne has that type of ability. I think Ruben Randall. So they've got the type of athletes that can handle the return and the coverage units pretty well. I do think punting is really important. Generating that field position is crucial, and you can't have breakdowns. Can you imagine play good defense and you have a poor job handling punts and you get it blocked and whatnot and you can give an easy score? That's what you don't want to have happen. Now the snappers are in really good position. Jorrick Crapel has been around for a couple of years and he does a really good job. Alec Russian has got some ability to cover and is a good snapper. And of course we've got from the snapping Kitchen family, Brian's sons Austin and Hunter, really good, and Logan Boudreau's another walk-on. The luxury you have in college ball is you can have 4 or 5 of those guys that you can just work as snappers and be a part of it. You like to have those guys and be in that 250-pound range so that they have some ability to get down the field and coverage. But you can have that. You don't, I tell you how important it is in the NFL. You have just snapper onlys in just about every team. That's how important it is and how tough it is. So you want your son to get a scholarship, and he's a young lad. Just have him snap the ball backwards. You can get him a scholarship pretty easily. In fact, Bill Belichick's done. Little Steve, I can't believe he's college age, got a scholarship at Rutgers just as a snapper. His dad did it. Not a very good player is Stevie, but boy, he can snap, and he got a scholarship to Rutgers. So that's one way to earn a scholarship without question.
Here's some comments from Coach Miles on who will be returning punts and kickoffs for the LSU Tigers.
Return game, I like Tyrann Mathieu for our punts. I like Ron Brooks, Mo Claiborne to fill the void for Patrick Peterson in the kickoffs. I think that we'll be, good, very fast in coverage, and I think that the, some of the things that Thomas McGahee brings from the NFL will really factor in very quickly to this special teams unit. I think we'll be much further ahead doing some of the things that he's done in the NFL, and allows us maybe a little better use of the fields.
There's a couple of questions about special teams. Punting. Ideally, what does the coach want? 40, 42 yards with really good hang time where a coverage team can get down there and minimize the return?
Yeah, you'd like to have 40 in 4.0. You like a 4.0, 4.0. If you can get that consistently, that gives you enough time. It really doesn't matter. If you kick it 60 yards and you're in that 3.4, 3.5 range, it's not as good as getting.
They're going to bring it back.
Yeah, you're not as good as getting at 4 to 4.2 range, 4.2 seconds at 40 yards. You've got really good. You've got a chance to really do a good job in coverage. So we've got a formula that we use in terms of taking hang time and distance. That those are the two areas. And again, it all starts from being able to get a good get off and being able to be clean with handling the punt. And it's something that is, I think, overlooked a great deal. But when you have those problems, it kind of manifests itself, and then you really know that there's a problem. But that's ideally what you'd like to have.
And also in the punt game, there are times when you want a punter to kick it out of bounds.
Directional kick without question.
Kick it out of bounds inside the 20, hopefully inside the 10, between the 10 and the goal line. And then you have other times when you're punting maybe out of your own end zone and you want to punt it to, between the hash mark and the sideline to try to shorten the width of the field for coverage purposes too. So a lot more that meets the eye in what the punter is being asked to do. He's not just being asked to catch it and kick it. There's direction, there's distance, there's hang time, there's third of the field. I mean, there's a lot of hidden strategy involved in punting.
No question, and it really does, I'm going to emphasize this again, it really does start with the handling of the ball and the drop. Normally when you have inconsistencies, when a guy has an explosive kick and then he has a shank, it's the drop. That's where it all really stems from. And the ability to position the ball properly, you can really teach a knuckleball. I mean, you can, by positioning the ball, you can get that high kick that it really stops like a pitching wedge on a golf course. And so being able to do that in directional kick is a great advantage. You want to try to get that ball inside the 10 in particular. Anything inside the 20 is a positive. But anytime you can make a defense that's go a little bit further, that's part of the hidden yardage we talked about.
And in the return game, in punting and kickoffs, so we can put it in both categories. Coaches will study tape, study other teams, and try to find a weakness or a spot that can perhaps be exploited, be it up the middle, be it down the side, be it some cross blocking on a punt return or walling. I mean, again, special teams, we talk about it being so important, and those of you that played high school football, perhaps college football, you understand it, but the general fan who maybe has never played a game sometimes doesn't realize how much really goes into that. And that, same thing on when you think you can block a punt, and you see something that's vulnerable that you can attack. That's all part of the game plan, just as much as offense and defense.
Well, there's a reason why running backs, receivers, defensive backs are returners. They're good athletes, so that's the big part of it. But run skills, run instincts are important. You set up a middle return, you can't have your returner suddenly thinks he's got something on the outside and he doesn't, and we call it run to darkness instead of run to daylight. You got to be able to have that. Punt returns are a little more complex. You got to have real good peripheral vision. You've got to feel the pressure of the rush coming, and you've got to be able to catch that ball and see it, and then kind of peel your eyes down and look at and be able to make sure catches. So it's really important. Kick returns are a little easier. It's a little longer. Even though you've got some height on the kickoffs, it's not as much as punts. You've got a little bit more of a lead start. But there again, it's about run vision. It's about assignment football. When you got it blocked to go a certain way, it's no different than when you got to run a pass pattern a certain way as a receiver, or a runner hitting the right hole where it's designed to be blocked. Those things are really important and a big part of it. Well, another thing that's we mentioned about snappers, but holders are really important, and Jarrett Lee does a really good job. That is a position everybody takes for granted, but if you don't have a good holder and he's not consistent, it's going to throw off the timing of the field goal kicker. And oftentimes, when you look at your operational time, you break down your operational time in 3 areas: the snapper to the holder from the time he touches it with his hands and puts it on the ground, and then what we call ground to toe time, and that's the field goal kicker from the time the ball gets placed on the ground to the time it impacts his foot. You take that whole operation time, and if it's a little bit, a 1/10 of a second slow, you have to break down all those individual times to see if the snapper's not getting it back quick enough, if the holder's having a little bit of a handling issue, or the kicker is a little bit slow approaching the ball, because just a 1/10 of a second is enough. The difference between getting a field goal off, get one blocked.
2 more questions about special teams, and then we'll get to a break. About a decade ago, special teams went from being those third teamers and the freshmen and the sophomores, or maybe the seniors that were third on the depth chart, running down on special teams. Now you see starters, you see all conference players. What caused that transition?
Well, I think the realization of, and it really depends again on the style of your team. If you're going to put an emphasis on the importance of special teams, you've got to put your best players on it. I think ideally every coach would like to take their best athlete, their young athletes rather, and it's a great way to teach them and learn. If you got a linebacker, you got a tight end, the progression on coverage, on protection units, on return units. Those are all good ways to get a good feel for getting integrated into the base offense or defense. But you have times where you got assignment issues and breakdowns, and it leads to a play getting blown up, big turnover, lack of a return, a big return put on you, to where you've got to sew that up and fill that hole a little bit with a guy that's a little bit more experienced. And we've seen that. We saw it last year with some issues at LSU. So I think it just depends the emphasis that are put on it. But I do think the best special teams units are the ones that put their starters on it. Virginia Tech has been consistently the best in the country for years. And the reason is Frank Beamer coaches it himself, for one, and it's an honor. They have special shirts in practice. It's an honor. Guys want to. They've made it important to the point where if it's a badge of honor. If you're not voted to be put on the coverage unit or the return unit, it's offensive. Whereas in a lot of cases, I'd really rather not do it. So it's the emphasis of how you put on it, and I think there's certain teams and certain schools that put more of an emphasis on it, and the ones that do usually end up a little bit better with their special teams units.
Final question about special teams. Fake punts, fake field goals, it's all part of it. All teams work on it, all have a few tricks up their sleeve. We've seen Coach Miles at LSU pull it out a handful of times over the years. Element of surprise is certainly a key factor. Execution is a factor, but all teams work on those trick plays.
You have it in your playbook. You work on it. You'll work on it a lot. It's just when you use it. It has to be the right time, the right situation. I was a part of what is known as the Music City Miracle. Frank Wycheck to Kevin Dyson when we beat the Buffalo Bills in the wild cards of the playoffs. That play, we practiced, every Friday for 3 years and never ran it. And I can remember players saying, not this again. Got to practice it, never ran it. But when we needed it, that preparation for 3 years every week. It was done, and that's why you do it. That's why you do those things. You're not going to run it a lot unless it's a right situation and you've got the right look. You know, the way they're going to line up is going to determine whether one play would work better than the other, and obviously you have to prepare for different situations, and there's no substitute for preparation time.
All right, when we come back, we'll be joined by Brian Lazar of TigerBait.com. We got another hour for you. We'll open the phones in a little bit. We'll make our weekly run through the LSU athletic department. We'll update you again for those that weren't tuned in the first part of the program on the latest with Jordan Jefferson and the incident off campus with the barroom scuffle, parking lot scuffle, whatever you want to call it. We'll get to all of that and more. You're watching Tigers Roar on Pelican Sports TV.